I woke up to the vibration of my phone at 2 a.m. Its blue light slicing through the dark hotel room. The message preview glowed on the screen. Mom finally did something about that house of yours. You're welcome. For a second, I just stared at it, half asleep, mind foggy from the long flight to Seattle. The house? My house in Alexandria. The one I bought 2 years ago after joining the Marshal Service. I had chosen it carefully, 3 bedrooms, quiet neighborhood, 15 minutes from the courthouse, 20 from headquarters. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, the one stable thing in my otherwise chaotic life. I unlocked the phone and read the rest. We sold it. You were never there anyway. The money will help your sister with her wedding. I sat up so fast I nearly dropped the phone. They sold my house. Me, you what? Mom, don't be dramatic. We had your power of attorney from when you were deployed. We used it. $850,000 cash. Your father and I split it with Emma for her wedding. You can thank us at the reunion next week. I just stared at the screen, my pulse thundering in my ears. That power of attorney, she was talking about a document I'd signed 6 years ago, before Afghanistan, before the Marshals. I'd never revoked it. Mom, stop the sale immediately. Mom, it's done. Closed yesterday. Stop being selfish. Family helps family. For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of the hotel air conditioner and the steady drum of my heartbeat. Then I grabbed my phone again and called my supervisor. Chief Crawford. My voice trembled. We have a problem. There was a sleepy groan on the other end. Riley, it's 2 a.m. What kind of problem? My family just sold my house in Alexandria. A pause. Then, quietly, the house? You mean the safe house? Yes, sir. Jesus Christ, he whispered. The one we've been using for the Leone case? I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Yes, sir. Angela Marino and her kids are still there for another 3 weeks before relocation. Another pause. Longer this time. Get on the first flight back to D.C. I'm activating the emergency response team. We need to move them. Now. By 10 a.m., I was back in D.C., running on caffeine and panic. 17 unread messages from my mother filled my phone, each more self-righteous than the last. You're overreacting. You're ruining your sister's wedding. We did this for you. I ignored them all and drove straight to headquarters. Crawford was already waiting in the secure conference room, looking like he hadn't slept either. Beside him sat legal counsel Patricia Ward and 2 senior marshals. Sit, Crawford said flatly. Tell us everything. So I did. The power of attorney, my parents' access to it, the sale without my knowledge. As I talked, I could see the disbelief on their faces harden into fury. Ward typed something on her laptop, her voice low and measured. You're saying your parents sold a property registered as a federal safe house? One currently housing a protected witness in a major organized crime case. Yes, ma'am. She looked up. Who bought it? I don't know yet. My mother mentioned $850,000 in cash, way below market value. Crawford swore under his breath. That property's worth at least $8 million. Either your parents were conned, or something worse. Ward frowned at her screen. The buyer was a company called Riverside Holdings LLC. Registered in Delaware. No visible owners, classic shell setup. The room went silent. So you're saying, I said quietly, someone targeted that property. I'm saying, Ward replied, someone paid cash for a federal safe house protecting a witness testifying against a crime family. That's not a coincidence. Crawford stood, his jaw tight. We're moving the Marinos immediately. Riley, you're with me. Ward, dig into Riverside Holdings. Find out who they are and how they knew about that house. We rolled up to my Alexandria property in a convoy of unmarked SUVs. The protection detail, Marshals Chin and Alvarez, met us at the door, both looking startled. Sir? Agent Riley? Chin asked. What's going on? We didn't get any relocation orders. The house was sold, Crawford said bluntly. Without authorization. We're evacuating now. Sold? Alvarez's hand hovered near his weapon. I nodded, throat tight. Family issues. Inside, Angela Marino looked up from the kitchen table where she sat with her 2 children, their plates of half-eaten sandwiches before them. When she saw the tactical team, her face drained of color. What happened? Did they find us? No, ma'am, Crawford said gently. But we need to move you. Now. 10 minutes to pack essentials. Her voice shook. But you said this house was safe. I know what we said. There's been a complication. You'll be safer at the new location. I helped her gather the kids' things, trying to keep my voice calm while my mind screamed. My family, my own mother, had sold a federal safe house. As we loaded the Merinos into the convoy, Crawford turned to me. Where are your parents now? I swallowed. Family reunion. My uncle's farm in Pennsylvania. They're expecting me tomorrow. He gave a grim nod. Change of plans. We're going today. Bring a recorder. I want everything on record. The sun was low by the time we reached the farm, golden light spilling over acres of rolling fields. Laughter, music, the smell of barbecue filled the air. My mother stood by the grill, laughing with my aunts. When she saw me, her face lit up until she noticed the men in suits behind me, the badges gleaming in the fading light. Her smile faltered. Grace? What's going on? I stopped a few feet away, the gravel crunching under my boots. We need to talk about the house. Oh, for heaven's sake, she sighed. Are you still upset about that? We did you a favor. That house, I said, voice rising, was a federal safe house. Her laughter died. The yard went silent. My father stepped out of the house, a beer halfway to his lips. My sister, Emma, froze beside him. What? My mother whispered. The house you sold, I said. It was being used by the U.S. Marshals to protect a witness and her children. You compromised an active case. Her face turned ashen. We didn't know. You didn't ask. The air felt heavier as I stepped closer, Crawford at my side, Ward and the tactical agents forming a tight semicircle behind us. My mother clutched my father's arm, her face pale, his jaw tight. My sister, Emma, fidgeted nervously beside them. Grace, my father said, voice trembling, you have to understand. I understand perfectly, I cut in. You sold a house that wasn't just mine. It was federal property, housing a protected witness against the Leone crime family. Do you even realize what you've done? We thought it was just a house you weren't using, my mother stammered. We had your power of attorney. We were helping Emma's wedding. You were helping yourselves, I said sharply. That money didn't belong to you. And you sold it to the wrong people. Crawford stepped forward, his badge catching the last rays of sunlight. Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, you've potentially endangered 3 lives. That's not exaggeration. The Merinos were inside when you sold this property. They're lucky we acted fast. My father shook his head. We didn't know. We didn't know it was a safe house. We didn't know anyone was inside. Yes, you did know, Ward said sharply, holding up her laptop. You discussed Grace's property, federal property, at a country club gathering. You told acquaintances about assets you could liquidate. Someone overheard. That's how the Leone family knew exactly which house to target. I could see the color drain from their faces. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. My father's hands gripped his beer like it was a lifeline. You were exploited, I said flatly. Your greed, or your obliviousness, made you a perfect target. You handed them a federal safe house on a silver platter. Emma grabbed my arm. Grace, please, we didn't know. You never ask before making major decisions about my property, I said, my voice steady but icy. You never respect the fact that I might have reasons for privacy. That my work, the lives I'm responsible for, is more important than your assumptions. That's not fair. You took my wedding money too. For $100,000. My mother's lips trembled. We were trying to help. No, you were trying to help yourselves. I gestured toward the tactical agents. Everything from the sale, including bank accounts, cash, and assets bought with that money, will be seized. And yes, you are both being charged with federal crimes, 18 U.S.C. 1512, witness tampering, and 18 U.S.C. 641, theft of government property. I watched my mother slump, tears running down her cheeks. My father's face crumpled, eyes wide, voice quivering. Grace, it wasn't intentional. You have to believe us. We didn't mean any harm. You endangered 3 people, I said evenly. Angela Marino and her children could have been killed. For years in federal prison is lenient compared to what could have happened. Ward stepped closer, her tone firm. You sold federal property without authorization, misused power of attorney, and did so to a shell company likely connected to organized crime. The law doesn't see we didn't know as an excuse when lives were at risk. Crawford added, we've traced Riverside Holdings. It's linked directly to the Leone family. They bought the house knowing exactly what it was. Your actions put a federal witness and her children at risk. My parents sank onto the bench near the patio, the reality of the situation finally landing. My mother whispered, please. Grace, can't you do something? We were just trying to help. I shook my head. I can't interfere with a federal prosecution. I am the U.S. Marshal in charge of these matters. What you did isn't a mistake, it's a serious breach of law and trust. Family doesn't excuse criminal negligence. Emma's hands were trembling as she clutched her fiancé's arm. What happens now? She asked softly. You'll see the consequences, I said. You'll lose your freedom, your assets, and your reputation. You will be held accountable. And hopefully, you'll learn the cost of carelessness. Real consequences, not imagined ones. The tactical team moved in. 2 agents approached my parents, hands on the cuffs. Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, you're under arrest, one said. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. My father's hands shook violently as the cuffs clicked into place. My mother's eyes were wide with disbelief, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I felt a pang of sorrow, not for them, but for the lives they almost destroyed. The Marinos had been evacuated safely, the house swept for surveillance devices, and Riverside Holdings shell connections confirmed. This was the worst possible outcome from a simple family misunderstanding. I watched my parents led to the vehicles. Emma and her fiancé looked stunned. Crawford put a hand on my shoulder. You did what you had to do, he said quietly. It wasn't personal. You did your job. I nodded, not meeting their eyes. It was personal. My parents had betrayed not just me, but my responsibilities, the people I was sworn to protect. As we drove back to D.C., the sun dipped behind the hills, shadows stretching across the fields. My family, the people I thought I could trust, were now federal inmates. I kept my gaze forward, hands tight on the wheel, mind racing through what had just happened. I would never see my parents the same way again. But at least, for now, 3 innocent lives were safe. And that was the only thing that mattered. The next morning, I was back in my office at the U.S. Marshal's headquarters, caffeine barely keeping me awake. Crawford had set up a secure conference room for an urgent debrief with the legal team, tactical coordinators, and intelligence analysts. Mitchell, Crawford said, already reviewing a tablet, Riverside Holdings is more complicated than we expected. Shell company registered in Delaware, multiple layers of ownership. Initial forensics point straight to the Leone family. I rubbed my temples. So my parents essentially gave organized crime direct access to federal assets. Exactly, Ward confirmed. And because they sold it below market value, it was an incentive for a quick sale. We need to document everything. Emails, phone records, property paperwork. We're talking witness tampering, misappropriation of federal property, and conspiracy charges if others were involved. Patricia Williams, our legal counsel, added, the key now is proving intent. Your parents may claim ignorance, but the fact they discussed federal property in public spaces opens them up to being seen as willfully negligent. Plus, Riverside Holdings' connections are clear. We can't let this slide. I sighed. I keep thinking about the Marinos. Angela, her kids, if I hadn't caught the sale in time, they'd be dead. My parents nearly killed 3 innocent people for $850,000 cash. Crawford placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You did everything you could. We moved them fast. Witness protection protocols held. But legally, your parents are in deep trouble. And now we need to trace every step Riverside Holdings took from inception to the purchase. Over the next few days, I dove into the investigation. Emails from my parents to the real estate agent, bank wire transfers, signatures, shell company filings, even social media posts from the country club. It was a digital paper trail that practically screamed, "Here's your house." The tactical team continued to monitor the Alexandria property. The house had been fully swept, listening devices, cameras, even the faintest traces of tracking software, all designed to alert the Leone family if anyone tried to interfere. It was a small miracle the Marinos hadn't been discovered before our intervention. By the end of the week, formal charges had been filed. My parents were facing federal prosecution for witness tampering, theft of government property, and fraudulent use of power of attorney. The $400,000 wedding fund was seized as evidence. My sister's engagement had collapsed under the weight of scandal. I had to appear as a witness in the federal case. Sitting across from them in the courtroom, both in orange jumpsuits, I could hardly recognize my mother and father. They looked older, exhausted, diminished. I felt no sympathy. My duty to protect others outweighed any familial bond. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Delgado, presented our evidence in excruciating detail. "Mrs. and Mr. Hawthorne," she said, "your actions placed federal witnesses in imminent danger. You acted outside your legal authority, and in doing so, directly facilitated the efforts of a known organized crime family." My parents whispered, pleading, eyes darting toward me. "It was a misunderstanding," my mother said quietly. "We were just trying to help Emma's wedding." I kept my gaze forward, focusing on the courtroom proceedings. "You endangered lives for a wedding fund," I said internally. 3 people are alive today only because I moved fast. Weeks later, the Leone family's involvement became clearer. Riverside Holdings was their tool, designed to acquire any property suspected of being a safe house. The FBI corroborated that the sale of my house was no accident. It was a deliberate attempt to access protected witnesses. Angela Marino and her children were successfully relocated to a secure facility out of state. She testified against Vincent Leone Sr., who was sentenced to life imprisonment. His son, Vincent Jr., received 20 years for witness tampering and conspiracy. My parents were convicted 6 months after the sale. My father received 4 years, my mother 3, plus 2 years of supervised release. The judge emphasized that ignorance and familial loyalty were not defenses when lives were endangered. My sister's life had been upended. The wedding she'd planned evaporated with the seizure of her funds. Even after the trial, letters arrived from my parents. My mother wrote dozens of times from her minimum security facility, filled with apologies, pleas, and explanations. She claimed to have learned her lesson. My father wrote occasionally from his cell, asking for forgiveness and reconciliation. I filed the letters away unresolved. Crawford visited me weeks later. "She reached out," he said. "Your mother wants reconciliation." I shook my head. "No, not now. Maybe someday, but not today." I glanced at Angela Marino's Christmas card on my desk, the one with her smiling children, alive and safe. That was the only measure that mattered. My parents' feelings could wait. Boundaries had been crossed, laws had been broken, and innocent lives had been put at risk. Work consumed me after that. Case files, witness relocations, federal investigations, each one a reminder of the stakes of my job. And each one a reminder of why I could never allow my personal attachments to interfere with my duty. Family mattered. But the law mattered more. Lives mattered most of all. And I would never forget the lesson of Riverside Holdings. Greed, ignorance, and carelessness could kill. After my parents' conviction, life settled into an uneasy rhythm. I returned fully to my work with the U.S. Marshals Service, managing safe houses, coordinating witness protection details, and building cases against organized crime. My parents' betrayal was a constant reminder. Even family could pose a threat if boundaries weren't respected. My sister, Rachel, had retreated entirely. The wedding she had planned for months was canceled. Her fiancé left after the financial collapse and the public scrutiny. She moved to Oregon to live with our aunt, seeking anonymity and distance from Pennsylvania's judgmental whispers. Our relationship became minimal. I called her occasionally, checked in on her well-being, but conversations about the past were off-limits. Mom's letters arrived sporadically. 8-page letters filled with apologies, explanations, and attempts at reconciliation. She wrote about the time they spent in prison, the routines, the reflections, the regrets. I read each letter once, then filed it carefully with the case documents. I never responded. Dad was slightly different. Released 2 months early for good behavior, he tried calling, sending emails, occasionally leaving messages through mutual family friends. Each attempt was met with the same silence from me. There was nothing to say. Actions had consequences. They endangered lives. That couldn't be undone. Crawford stopped by my office one afternoon, his expression neutral but kind. "Mitchell," he said, "I know it's hard. Family reaching out, asking for forgiveness, but remember why you do this work. You've protected people who have no one else. That's the measure of your life." I nodded. I know. It's hard to separate personal feelings from duty, especially when family betrays trust in ways that could have been lethal. The Alexandria property was eventually secured and repurposed within the Federal Witness Protection System. Enhanced security measures were installed, and protocols were reinforced to prevent another unauthorized sale or breach. Every step of that process reminded me how fragile the balance was between ordinary life and the dangerous work we do. 2 years later, my parents sent another letter. Mom had been transferred to a minimum security facility in West Virginia. This time, her words were more restrained, more reflective. She acknowledged the full scope of what they'd done, the lives they'd endangered, and the irreparable damage to our family trust. I filed it next to the others, untouched, a record of both their remorse and my unwavering decision to maintain distance. Professionally, I thrived. I was promoted to oversee multiple safe houses across the Mid-Atlantic region, coordinating operations that protected dozens of witnesses and their families. Each success was bittersweet, a reminder that my parents' recklessness had made these lessons painfully clear. Occasionally, I would think about the Marinos, now safely relocated, living lives far from the threats my parents had inadvertently exposed them to. Angela sent a card every Christmas with her children's smiling faces. Alive. Safe. That became my personal benchmark of success. The lives saved, the threats neutralized, the people who could live free from terror because of my vigilance. Family visits, dinners, casual gatherings, these no longer included my parents. Boundaries had been drawn and enforced. Love and duty were no longer synonymous. I learned to compartmentalize, to separate those I cared about from those whose actions could jeopardize everything I had worked for. And in the quiet moments, when I sat at my desk reviewing case files or coordinating witness moves, I allowed myself one private thought. The weight of responsibility is heavy, but necessary. Lives depend on vigilance, on boundaries, on doing what's right, even when it's personal. Mom and Dad are out of prison now, living quietly in Florida, away from scrutiny. They occasionally send letters, but I never respond. Their remorse cannot undo the potential disaster they created, and forgiveness is not automatic. It must be earned, and for now, it cannot outweigh the lessons learned or the lives they almost cost. I continue my work with precision and dedication. I maintain safe houses, relocate witnesses, and protect families from threats they can't see. And while family remains important, boundaries are sacred. Trust must be earned. And life, real life, the lives of others, must always come first. Because in the end, 3 lives survived, and that matters more than any family reconciliation.